Welcome back, everyone, and it's my pleasure to be able to host a panel discussion on leadership and scaling up. And we're really privileged this afternoon to have three experts in the field of volunteering and leadership with us here this afternoon. But primarily, I'd like to introduce Richard Dent, who will then introduce our two other guests, Tim and Sharon. Richard has been an expert on leadership for quite some time now, perhaps over 2 decades, leading large, complex organisations, advising government and contributing to public policy and major social campaigns, such as the NDIS, as well as fostering leadership in business, government and civic organisations. Since concluding 7 years at Leadership Victoria, Richard has been actively involved in his new organisation called Leading Progress, where he undertakes portfolio leadership activities across Australia and internationally, including my home country of New Zealand. Richard is also the chair of the Leadership Network, which is a for-purpose organisation dedicated to accelerating and enhancing the practice and profession of leadership development through Australia. Welcome, Richard, and thank you very much for being the facilitator of this panel.
Thank you, Scott. It's great to be involved in supporting Volunteering Victoria's incredibly important mission. I'd like to acknowledge that if we're in Australia on this session, then we're on the land of the traditional custodians of the land. And it's been their land for generations, and sovereignty has never been ceded. It's great also to be celebrating National Volunteer Week. For my own personal context, volunteering has always been part of my life, both where I've been involved in running organisations and as part of my personal life as well. In particular, in my time at Leadership Victoria, we had a network of about 1,500 volunteers who brought not just their social skills, their community skills, but their professional skills as well into the volunteering they contributed to the world. We all now know that we're in a new environment, and we've been listening for the last 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks as this crisis has been flowing over us and around us. And we've needed to have a particular type of leadership to get us through that crisis. In times of crisis, we need direction, protection, and order from people who have leadership roles. But that's now starting to transition into the next phase, the post-COVID phase. And we're going to need a different type of leadership as we go in. And that absolutely applies in the field of volunteering, as it does in most other fields of society. I was in a Harvard session a couple of nights ago where the Harvard economics professor, remember the economics professor was saying this, that 3 things need to emerge from this crisis. One is we need to revisit what good governance means, and he was in America, so he probably had a bit of an insight on that. We need to revisit the economic and social impact of good universal systems, particularly healthcare, and again in America, a particular thing there. But his third one resonated most strongly for today's session, and that is we need to recognise the economic and social importance of connectedness and participation from a local community level through to a national level. And of course, that's what we're doing when we're fostering volunteering, developing volunteers and helping change the world through volunteers. And so the session today is trying to explore how did we respond in the crisis, and then what do we need to do next here? Many people are saying that at this time we don't want to move back, revert to the old normal. We want to try and move forward to a new normal. So the question is, what's volunteering's role in this, and particularly for people who are managing and coordinating volunteers? Volunteering, of course, is part of connectedness, a sense of personal purpose. It's about skill development and deployment, and as Anthony said, the Parliamentary Secretary a few minutes ago, that might be particularly important at the moment where there's a fundamental shake-up of the employment market. And thirdly, volunteering is about the contribution by all to all. We're all in Australia together, and we're all making a contribution to a better world. So this actually could be the volunteering profession, if I can put it like that. It could be our golden opportunity. How do we lead to scale up volunteering and to go forward post-crisis for both economic recovery and for social recovery and a new and better world? So in preparing for this ongoing change and mobilising others and holding to that purpose, we're going to hear from 2 leaders, Sharon Walsh and Tim Ryan, Shaz Walsh and Tim Ryan, in the field about how they responded so far and what comes next. So firstly, I'd like to introduce Chaz Walsh there, who's Director of Volunteer Services at Bendigo Health. She oversees all aspects of a significant health provider's volunteerism. Chaz has been doing this for 20 years or more, leadership and volunteering in both metropolitan and regional Victoria. And in addition to her work at Bendigo Health, Chaz has also established the Leaders of Health Volunteer Engagement Network, the LOVE network. And that supports more than 170 managers and coordinators of volunteers within the health sector from across Australia and in fact New Zealand as well. So welcome, Chaz.
Thank you.
Chaz, I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about what has happened for you recently, what the impact's been, and what comes next.
That is a very big question. Firstly, Scott, thanks for having me, and happy National Volunteer Week to everyone out there. So what it's meant to me, I guess I'm over three things really. I've got three different roles. So I'll break them down to Bendigo Health, the Loddon Health regional project that I'm working on, and also the Love Network. So what COVID has meant for me is that as at the 16th of March, more than 250 volunteers were stood down immediately. The impact of that means that our patients and our residents and staff are really missing the volunteers who would normally support activities within our health service. I've had staff that have been redeployed, so I've got one on extended leave because the project's been put on hold, and another one redeployed to another area. So that has also meant that I've picked up some additional work because those guys aren't around. This is week 9 or 10 for me working from home. And as well as, business as usual, I've also picked up a role supporting the staff wellbeing hotline, which is providing services to our staff on the front line. And I'm doing a minimum one shift with them a week, which is 9 in the evening till 9 in the morning. And it's also meant that one of our roles particularly has been, volunteer roles has been picked up by some staff. So that's at Bendigo Health. With the Loddon Health Volunteer Recruitment Strategy Project, that's had a little bit of addition added to it so that we're looking at a COVID response on that as well. There's been some issues with that because there's difficulty in getting hold of stakeholders, which have also been redeployed because their volunteers aren't around. There is a level of uncertainty, I guess, about volunteering within the health sector and across our region. There's some real concerns about the re-engagement of our current volunteers and potentially new volunteers, partly due to a lot of our volunteers being in the high-risk category, but there's also a level of fear about people coming into our health service because they might catch COVID. Add to that, I think we're potentially going to have more scrutiny around volunteers working in health because they will likely be expected to do some mandatory education that might be around PPE or infection prevention, those sorts of things. But there'll also be a level of scrutiny around who's been vaccinated against the flu and who is safe to be in that environment. And then with the Love Network, we've also had many of our members that have been redeployed to other tasks within their health service. There is also a level of uncertainty about their roles and their volunteers and job security moving forward. So that's meant for me that I've been providing greater levels of individual support, so whether that's by phone, Zoom or email to members. And I'm looking or considering how we can maintain, ongoing motivation and commitment to health volunteering strategies for both the role of volunteers, but also for leaders of volunteers, which is pretty difficult when we're working in a world that's not quite normal. And there is a sense of feeling a bit redundant. And I'm also looking at ways to keep volunteering front of mind for our health organisations and also the Department of Health and Human Services during and post the phase. So go.
Can I ask then what is post this phase in that case?
Well, that's a very good question. I don't think any of us really know at this point, and I think we're all muddling along hoping for the best. So I guess for me, that's trying to plan in advance. So, you know, if it goes one way, what does that look like? If it goes another way, what does that look like? I'm, along with many people in the sector, I'm looking at a risk assessment tool that keeps our volunteers safe, that reassesses the roles that our volunteers that are doing, that still engages our executive in, you know, in keeping volunteering within our health services, because as Anthony said, they are hugely important. You know, the commitment and the connection to volunteering is profound, and it impacts on so many areas of our world.
And so what are you planning in terms of, so the LOVE network is great. What are you planning in terms of other networking?
Well, I have been doing a little bit of networking locally, nationally and internationally. So I've been doing that more on a one-on-one basis. Really trying to understand what's happening for other people in their organisations, what it's meant to them, and whether or not there's any opportunity for collaboration. So one of the things that's come out of that, I guess, locally is that through the volunteer resource centres in our region, and also a number of other big players, I'm looking at, well, if COVID takes off and we are expected to react very, very quickly with a whole lot of volunteers, how are we going to do that? How are we going to work together so that we can manage that situation for our community?
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, Shaz. That was great. It's you've responded well and you're thinking about the future, which sounds like excellent leadership. So that's wonderful. Our next guest is Tim Ryan. Tim, welcome. Tim, good to see you. Tim's been the CEO of the Lord Somers and Powerhouse for almost 2 years. He's been leading, therefore, one of Victoria's oldest and most respected organisations. Tim's experience spans both the non-profit and the commercial world, in addition to having been a professional footballer and one of those scary people, a fitness trainer. Welcome, Tim.
It seems so long ago now.
So, Tim, what's happened for you in this crisis, and what are you planning in terms of leadership going forward in volunteerism?
Well, thanks for the question, Richard. And it's affected us all greatly right across the globe. I think it's the first time I can remember being involved in a worldwide epidemic. That's for sure. Our particular situation, where we live and breathe on a social enterprise system, so we run paid for camps for schools and groups and different businesses to support the community programs that we run and deliver for marginalised groups and those less fortunate than ourselves. And that business has been stripped back to the bone. We're fortunate that we've been able to hold on to about 4% of our revenue, so dropping 96% of revenue overnight like a switch has had a really devastating effect. But speaking with a number of different people, very grateful that we hold on to 4%. And it's been a real test to pause our programs, and I think we're just we've had the ability to mourn the loss of our programs and the things that pillars of our support within the community, but we're doing a great amount of things to adapt very quickly and return value in the way we can.
Fantastic. And so you've been navigating this, and I have to say, 96% drop in income sounds absolutely devastating. And well done you for adapting to this and thinking about what a new future might look like. What do you think the key elements of that new future might look like?
Well, I mean, we've already explored part of it. We've adjusted our programs where possible. At the end of the day, our mission is to break down barriers to allow us to build a stronger, more inclusive society. And we've traditionally done that in a face-to-face setting, and ultimately that's where it's done best. But we are a volunteer-led organisation, and the strength of our volunteers' creativeness and ability to adapt is absolute credit to all of them. From an office-based perspective or an organisation, we largely exist to provide a platform for them and the support for them to go and create what they're all about. So already we've seen introductions from canteen chats, so a virtual canteen to get down to have a spirited discussion on a range of different topics, from lightheartedness, from you know, a dog's better than cats, through to, you know, more deeper and meaningful conversations from you know, Indigenous reconciliation and topics of mental health, right through to a diversity disco that our members and volunteers ran to dance and jive the night away in the comfort of their own homes across Zoom, which was a great experience, and equally seeing our older members. So we're about diversity. Diversity comes in a range of different factors, from cultural and you know, your religion, and your ability and disability, is also age. So we have a program called OBE, which stands for Over Bloody 80s, and that community has embraced the virtual connection as well, by doing virtual luncheons, which have been a great success, and learning new skills very quickly for a lot of new people, and adjusting a lot of our programs to a light version. So not being the full-fledged programs that we run, but certainly continue to connect with the communities that need us the most, has been a great success.
Sounds fantastic, Tim. Tim, let's suppose that Doctor Who suddenly appeared and took you forward to Christmas 2021. Okay, what would you most want to have seen has been carried forward from this year's experience by Christmas 2021?
Well, look, I think there's a lot of things. I think the silver lining with this is, I think we're going to see a lot of new programs continue to stick, and I think the benefit of that is for us is to have that social connectedness. You know, have the ability to do so virtually, and as much as possible from the comfort of everyone's lounge rooms. So I think it has given us the ability to really, you know, it would have been nice to walk into it rather than get smacked right into it. But sometimes it's, you know, best ripping the Band-Aid off quickly and seeing how this virtual world can really help deliver a lot of connectedness and you know, engagement for our members and our community. Now, it's certainly not going to replace the face-to-face experience that you get in our camps or programs or activities, but I'd like to think that a lot of those programs that we've run, from online art exhibitions and our canteen chats and equally probably one of the most exciting things and initiatives that we've built is a Rock Around the World Challenge, which is ultimately bringing 8 charities together under one roof that are all on the front line supporting our community's most vulnerable in a virtual step challenge, embracing diversity of movement, which is you know, you can step in the sense of walking or running, roll on your wheelchair or your scooter or your bike, or rock, dance and jive the night away, or to contribute to one of the 8 charities where we collectively hope to raise enough steps to give us a lap of the world.
Fantastic. That's literally creating a better world, then, isn't it?
Indeed.
To go all that virtual distance. Fantastic. Thank you for that, Tim. So we've been curating some questions on the way through for the panelists. The first one here is for Sharon. So Sharon, as a volunteer manager, coordinator, director, what can I do, the question asks, to make a difference supporting my organisation and volunteers into the future?
Well, I've pondered this question myself. Really, I think it's about coming up with a plan, figuring out where it is you want your volunteer program to go, how you see that it can help the strategic needs of your organisation and address the needs of the people for whom you serve, and start planting seeds. So I'm working on a document for my CEO that looks at what are the roles I actually want to go forward, what are the changes that we can make, what are the cost implications of that. You know, are we needing money or saving money? I think the other thing that I'd like to see go forward really is around that connection to volunteering. My volunteers are all pining for the health service. They are pining because they're not contributing. They are feeling devalued I'm worried about some of their health and wellbeing issues, and I'd really love to see volunteering being front and centre as a health initiative in health organisations. So that's what I'm sort of working towards.
Yeah, fantastic. I think we need to recognise the sense of loss that many people have about the world that used to be, and the roles and activities that we used to have, and how things are moving forward. And one of the sayings about leadership is it's disappointing people at a rate that they can take, and we're not going to be suddenly going back to where the world was 10, 12 weeks ago. So that's a volunteer leadership activity, absolutely there. Second question here is for Tim, in fact. Tim, you mentioned before about diversity, and so this question is, what have you learnt from your Powerhouse project in relation to embracing diversity and collaboration?
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest opportunities out of this, I feel, and I see it every day over the last month or two, is the fact that we are all in this together. The opportunity for us to break down some silos and work across industry is upon us, and I think there's a great opportunity to really embrace that. I see that doing projects with a mindset of one is really, really difficult. However, a mindset of multiple is what really gets the job done. And I think that's a really good way to approach volunteering, is that you can go out there individually and do your bit by all means, but doing it as a team or as across industry can make a really big impact. And the opportunity with the Powerhouse project that we're embracing at the moment is really that. Is making sure that we've built the foundations for a stronger community that embraces diversity and helps support multiple charities across the industry do what they do best.
Fantastic, thanks, Tim. So a question then either to Tim or to Sharon. What do you see your role is as influencing the broader system? So we had the Parliamentary Secretary on earlier, so he's part of the broader system. But what's your role in influencing not just your organisation, but society more generally?
Well, I think it's just providing the platform to most efficiently engage in volunteering. I don't think it's a very complicated system that we need to help support. I really just think that providing the platform and the support that our volunteers need to go out and do what they do best is as much as we need to try to do at this moment. I'm a big favour in the keep it simple principle, and our volunteers within our organisation at least have been doing an amazing job for 91 years. So I'm not about to get in there and stop that. It's really making sure that we foster that, provide the platform for them to continue to do what they do best, and hopefully open some doors across industry that we can provide a platform to network, to engage, to have some efficiencies of scale as well, rather than doing two of the same things twice. We may as well try to get together, network, provide that platform to open some networks and have some efficiency of scale.
Which sounds like the sort of thing that Volunteering Victoria could continue to build on as well, the synergies, that holistic sort of system as well. Well, what about you, Shaz? What do you think?
I think for me, it's a little bit different. So while there is some small amount of opportunity to bring volunteer programs into an IT world, a lot of what we do in health is actually the human connection. And so my role I see at the moment is to make sure that my CEO and my executive don't forget about the volunteers. So I'm constantly, flooding them with emails, ideas, suggestions. I'm lucky that as part of the Loddon Health partnership, I have access to a group of CEOs. And so that means that I can sort of share ideas to them and just make sure that they don't forget us. We will be back, and there will be a need to have us back, and trying to maintain their vigour for volunteer programs in that time, or however long it takes, I think is my role to play in this.
Fantastic. So for both of you, maybe starting with Tim, what do you think the role of community organisations' boards is in responding to this crisis and mapping out a way forward? Tim, I know you answer directly to a board. Sharon, your organisation's overseen by a board. What do you think?
Yeah, great question. I mean, for me, I'm very fortunate, been well supported by a board that understand and have lived experiences within the organisation. So I think that the knowledge and understanding that boards can bring is important, but also having a balanced view across, making sure that they have a balcony view of what's going on within the organisation. I think it's very easy for a CEO or staff to get stuck in the trenches and partly blindsided in working on the priorities. So I think that a good board that has the appropriate vision to see a bit further than potentially staff can at any given time, and equally someone a board that is able to carry a good governance structure as well. Someone that we can make sure that our organisation is set up appropriately and is as protected as possible through supporting our volunteers.
Fantastic response, Tim. Shaz, for you?
I think if I was looking for board to kind of support, I really would want them to understand the impact of volunteering on health. If we engage more volunteers, then presumably they will be physically fitter, mentally, emotionally fitter. We'll hopefully keep them out of our health service. So it's not just something that's nice to do, it's actually something that we should be doing.
Because it has both social and economic benefits as well. Yeah, fantastic. So the next question that's been sent here is for either of you. Do you see opportunities for more corporate engagement, both in your programs and in volunteering programs more generally? So corporate engagement.
Want to go, Tim?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've got a strong corporate background. I've been in franchising for a number of years. I think there's great benefit of volunteering and making sure that organisations and corporates are doing their bit. But it's more than that. I think it's provides a great mental health release, a great opportunity to understand that there's something bigger than making $1 every day. And investing in the community that you're living in has the best return on investment you could possibly be looking for. So I think from a corporate perspective, I think it's very important that people get behind it, and it doesn't have to be just financial. I think a lot of organisations, as soon as I'm speaking with them, they're always wondering when the question for a donation is going to come their way. But whilst we certainly don't turn that down because the money goes to a great cause, it's more than that. I think there's a great opportunity to actively get involved, help promote organisations that are doing amazing things, and having that ability to be an involved community member again has a great return.
Fantastic. Shaz?
Yeah, look, we just started doing some work with a local corporate in Bendigo just prior to COVID, and we were so excited about the potential that had, not from just a perspective that the staff themselves would be participating within our health service, but of the information we could provide them to better care for their families and friends in their own community. So there was definitely a win-win. I think there's also opportunity not just to look at, it's necessarily as corporate volunteering, but I think that there's opportunity for business collaboration as well, and how we can work together. So whether it's actually in the system or whether they're doing something to support you externally from the system, absolutely there's more room for engagement of that.
Oh, fantastic. Good.
And I think just further to that, I really like Sharon's point, and it just reminded me that for example, our social ecosystem that we've established at the Powerhouse building, we're very, very fortunate that we've got an asset that's been there for some time, but having partners involved in that from a function centre point of view and cafe and rowing programs alike has meant that non-for-profit and community and sporting organisations and corporate entities are living in one social ecosystem that is able to support a network of wider communities. So I think it's a really important point that Sharon makes, is that it can very much coexist for benefit for all.
Absolutely, it's a very good point to make, Tim. So we're getting towards the end of our session now, but just a question for both of you. As a result of the COVID-19 crisis, what will you stop doing and what will you do differently?
I didn't think about what I'd stop doing. I think I would do differently. I suppose I would stop doing some of the face-to-face meetings and education and engagement of volunteers, because clearly that can be done via Zoom. So while I still think it has a a purpose, maybe I would do less of the face-to-face and perhaps more online. I would absolutely take forward some ideas around IT stuff and how we can do that better and differently. So I'm quite excited about, about the opportunity that holds. And I'm also very excited, I guess, or re-energised about what does this mean to me now? Like, what does my role mean? How am I going to be relevant within my organisation? How am I going to really engage volunteers so they don't want to be anywhere else but with me, supporting our health service? And how am I going to make them feel good about that? So I think there's heaps to do.
A great response, and people want to be involved generally in things, and so it's about transmitting that value proposition, the way they feel about that. And your point about the digital platform is really good, because in fact it makes the world much flatter and much more connected. It's to get people involved no matter where they are. So that's a good point, Chaz. Tim, what about for you? What will you stop doing and what will you do differently?
Oh, look, I think it's hard to create anything new from what Sharon's said, but yeah, I 100% agree. I think this will give us an ability to maybe perhaps slow down a few more face-to-face meetings and pick up a few more digital, just to provide some efficiency for our volunteers. And in terms of doing things different, well, I mean. The only things are practical things that come to mind in terms of what the government and health organisations will stipulate how we run our programs and camps and our social enterprise alike. But I think the main thing that we've got out of this is that we have the ability to connect further and wider than we have done to date, and we plan to have the ability to continue that.
Well, I would have to say that the missions of everyone in this conversation has never been more important than it has been right now. To make progress on a mission, one needs to exercise leadership. So what leadership attribute, Shaz, first, do you see as the most important one that you and people around you should be focusing on?
Well, that's a good question, and one I wasn't expecting. So I think really for me, it is about being passionate. Love what you do, understand your business, research it, talk to people, get engaged in conversations that can enhance it. It's all about leading from the heart, and the more you know and understand about your business, the better you're going to be able to do that with whatever stakeholder you're talking to.
Yeah, fantastic response. Yes, often we think about the head aspect of leadership, but head and heart go together. I mean, mobilising people towards important outcomes. So fantastic response. Thanks, Chaz. Well, what about for you, Tim? What key leadership attribute do you think?
Yeah, I think a recipe of leadership without passion is doomed to fail. So I 100% agree with Sharon on that one. Having a passion for what you do and a passion for what the organisation does is certainly key. And I think probably what I've learned most recently over the last couple of years is making sure that people have trust in you. trust in your decisions that you're able to make, and decisions that you're able to support others with. But equally, as much as trust, having the ability to be a collaborator. So listening to and supporting collaboration, especially within our organisation, and I'd probably argue across industries, is the best attribute a leader can have. Someone that can collaborate and workshop ideas for the best of the organisation is key.
Fantastic, Tim. So Sharon and then Tim, I think this will be the last question. How are you feeling now as a person and in role?
Firstly, exhausted. Like everyone else, I've probably picked up more work than I've let go of. But that being said, I'm actually excited. I'm excited about what the future holds for volunteering. I think if ever there was a time in our lives to draw a line in the sand and redo or rejig what's currently not working, now is the time. And so I'm excited about what that may bring for us. I don't know what it will bring, but I'm excited for what might come our way.
Thank you. I think excitement and optimism is great. And by the way, thank you for sharing that you're exhausted. I think that lots of people have been wearing lots of stuff. Tim?
Yeah, I think drawing back into having a home office means you can't really escape a lot of work, and it does feel exhausting, rolling in from a week into a weekend, not really feeling any different. So most certainly exhausted, but at the same time very much excited and ambitious for the future. I think it's been a great. What has happened in this world is an absolute disaster, and a lot of people lost their lives for it, or because of it, and being affected terribly because of it. So I certainly don't gloss over that fact, but it does equally give us an opportunity to focus on the future with somewhat of almost a clean and clear plan that we can not be afraid of what's going to come in front of us, and have the ability to really tackle it. So again, I'm excited and looking forward to that opportunity that the world's presented us.
I think it's really important that leaders like you and others express that sense of realistic optimism. We're here for an important purpose. We're leading people towards important purpose. Everything that's done through Volunteering Victoria and members and so forth is for creating a better world. I'm going to hand back to Scott Miller now, but thank you, Tim. Thank you, Shaz, for your contributions, not just in this conversation, but in the world more broadly. We're good people and we're out for a good purpose. So let's transition forward to a new, better normal. Over to you, Scott.
Thanks, Richard.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for providing the time and the expertise to this afternoon's panel discussion. It's great to have Sharon, who was one of the pro bono leaders of the year, wasn't it? Top 25, I think, for her amazing work, both in the health sector and across the wider volunteering space. And Tim as well, a huge disruption at the moment. So we walk in your shoes there, Tim, to recognise the uphill battle that this virus presents, but you've really given us some food for thought. And obviously Richard, who was one of our panel speakers at our conference last year, came back and said, this is a set of people that we need to mobilise and harmonise, and really grateful for Richard to be able to facilitate this session today. So on behalf of all of Volunteering Victoria, look, folks, really delighted to share this with you this afternoon, and for everybody watching at home, thanks very much, and hope you enjoy the rest of the broadcast.
Thanks, Scott.
All right.